Now that Nicolas Maduro and his wife have been captured, some might think that everything is settled in Venezuela. But I'm guessing that we are a long way from anything resembling normal in that country.
Pablo, Pablo, Pablo el molinero.
Hugo Chavez had already rigged the institutions of power in his party's favor. This includes the military, the Supreme Court, National Electoral Council, and the Congress. Maduro only intensified that stranglehold. In other countries where there are large groups of Venezuelan expats, there are joyous demonstrations in the streets. It's still early, but the streets of Caracas are strangely quiet. So far, there aren't massive demonstrations in support of the U.S. military actions. I'm sure an overwhelming number of Venezuelans are very happy, but I think they must understand that there is much more drama to come. The motorcycle gangs known as colectivos, who have always acted as unofficial enforcers for the regime, haven't taken to the streets either. 18 months ago, those gangs, along with the National Guard and elements of the Cuban security apparatus, were in the streets to suppress the protests after the opposition candidate for president, Edmundo Gonzalez, won the election by around 40 points. I have to tell you about something that happened in Venezuela in 2002. On April 11, there was a massive march in Caracas to protest the Chavez government. My son and I were in that march. Some of the protesters headed toward Miraflores Palace. We did not. As the protesters approached the area, a number of Chavez supporters overlooking the crowd from a bridge shot and killed 19 protesters and wounded another 150. Later that day, the Venezuelan military high command detained President Chavez and claimed that he had resigned. The next day, on April 12th, the high command named a business leader, Pedro Carmona, as interim president. Others in the business community, along with some labor unions and even the largest labor union in the country, the Confederación de Trabajadores de Venezuela, supported the designation of Carmona as the interim president. On the night of the 12th, the colectivos came out and swarmed all the opposition TV stations, newspaper offices, and other areas of the city. On the 13th, military officers loyal to Chavez retook Miraflores Palace, and the next morning Chavez was reinstated as president. The biggest problem the opposition had was that there was no legal basis for the coup, and even I believe that in the previous election, Chavez was re-elected by a majority of voters. At any rate, the counter-coup was started by the motorcycle-riding colectivos. We shall see how they react to the U.S. military action at some point. Of course, there are many differences between today and 2002. For one thing, Maduro wasn't legitimately elected and is credibly accused of being in the drug smuggling business. And clearly the biggest difference is the willingness of the United States government to commit to removing the current regime and has backed it up with military force. Venezuela is definitely involved in the smuggling business, but more as a facilitator for the various international cartels than as a producer. All of the cartels have offices in Venezuela, and it is a safe place to carry out their transaction, or it was at least. One person knowledgeable about the situation compared it to a casino that hosts poker games. The casinos take an agreed-upon amount known as the rake for hosting the event. The drugs that were smuggled from Venezuela mostly came from Colombia to the western state of Zulia, most likely to Lake Maracaibo, where they were then sent up north. The truth is, I believe the whole effort really has more to do with Russia, China, Cuba, and even Iran than it does with drug smuggling. All of those countries, in one way or another, are adversaries of the United States. Russia is Venezuela's military hardware supplier. Cuba has long been completely dependent on Venezuela for energy. Iran, Russia, and Cuba all work with Maduro to evade sanctions on petroleum. Venezuela even allows Hezbollah fighters to train on Margarita Island. And China, which has loaned the country a lot of money, well, China wants to rule the world. Anyway, Maduro may be gone, but the rest of the aforementioned official apparatus is still in place. The vice president, a woman named Delcy Rodriguez, has been sworn in as president. The National Assembly is still populated with oficialistas since the opposition boycotted the last election. The courts are still in place, and no one seems to know which elements of the military can be counted on to back the forming of a new government. I can't imagine this getting anywhere without wide cooperation from the Venezuelan military. But many of their generals are deeply compromised, bribed with drug money for their loyalty. Neither can I imagine U.S. troops in the Venezuelan streets trying to keep order. The colectivos would probably be more than willing to engage in a little door-to-door urban combat. That would be a disaster, and any support Trump has from the American citizenry would quickly evaporate. I really don't know what Trump means when he says that things will be controlled by Washington, but I have supported his efforts so far to rid the country of Nicolas Maduro. The operation to capture the dictator was apparently very well planned. It came off cleanly and quickly. Let's hope that the plans to stabilize Venezuela are successful. Our world would be better off with a wealthy and peaceful Venezuela instead of one that works with our adversaries to destabilize the United States and our own hemisphere. If you found this video interesting or enlightening, please take a moment to like and share it with your friends. Please subscribe to the channel and share any feelings or observations you have in the comments section. If you want to know more about Venezuela, look for our videos Blowing Up Venezuela and Trump Wins the Real Peace Prize, available for free on this channel. Thanks for watching. This is Pablo El Molinero.